Good morning, friends. I am Joya Chakraborty and I welcome you to this session on community participation. If you are a development practitioner, a social worker, a student, or a researcher interested to engage with and communicate with indigenous communities, then you may find this presentation useful for you. Most development programs these days insist on ensuring community participation. This is not only a thing which helps in making the policy relevant for the community, but it also helps in improving accountability. Community participation also improves the overall effectiveness of the program. While participating, communities get to understand the value of cohesiveness and realize the benefits of working together for a common goal. Through community participation, the members of the community also enrich the process. They bring forth their understanding, knowledge, and experience, which are essential and relevant for success of the program at hand. Communicating with communities becomes an integral part of such participatory development initiatives, which intend to foster community ownership and also, in the process, empower the community. Such empowerment happens not only as an outcome of the participatory social change, but is also achieved during the engagement process itself. Before we proceed to discuss the strategies of community participation, let us first understand what is a community. A community are a group of people who share a common place, that is, they reside in the same geographical area, or a group with a common identity in terms of ethnicity or culture. Thus, there can be both geographical as well as identity-based communities. Today we know that there are also virtual communities of people who are connected via social media. It is thus important to remember that individuals often belong to more than one community. For the purpose of our discussion today, we will restrict ourselves to geographically bound indigenous communities of people. Community participation is the active engagement of the people in solving their own development problem. Through the process of participation, those involved migrate from being passive consumers or users of services to decision makers and co-creators. It is suggested that the gap between the rhetoric and reality of participation is that it should have a purpose. The purpose and outcome of the process of community participation should be clearly outlined in the policy and also articulated in unambiguous terms to all stakeholders. Participation essentially means reorganizing the power dynamics to facilitate access and bring empowerment. Do not do community participation just because it is a fancy term or you feel happy to tick a checkbox which reads "Community participation done." Participation means to be a part. To be part of something suggests being integral to its construction and purpose. To operate in collaboration with others, being a partner in sharing responsibility for both decisions and actions, being active, not passive. Successful community engagement requires all stakeholders to be actively involved in decision-making, in identifying achievable targets, in developing a strategy, in delivering and measuring meaningful outcomes. Thus, community participation should happen at all stages of a development program, starting from identification of the problem up to monitoring and evaluation. To understand how and to what degree participation has to happen within any community development program, the most commonly cited model is the one developed by Sherry Arnstein. Published way back in 1969, it is called the Ladder of Citizen Participation and remains relevant even today. Einstein's ladder helps to understand the different types and degrees to which a participatory framework is created within any scheme of operations. She situates her model within the assumption that participation is about having power. According to her, participation cannot happen without redistribution of decision-making power. The ladder has 8 rungs. Starting from the lowest rung, the degrees of participation can be categorized as non-participation, that is, when the citizens are passive. Next, as tokenism, where the citizens are partially responsive. And lastly, the citizen power, where they are actively engaged in the process. Manipulation and therapy are both non-participative. Here, the purpose is to just cure or educate the passive participants who are understood to have no knowledge or capacity. The idea is to just create an environment of acceptance and agreement among the public through strategies of public relations. This is the type of participation that we are most familiar with. Here, there is no active role designated for the public. Informing is understood to be the crucial first step of participation. However, in most cases, it is limited to one-way, top-down flow of communication from those in control of the process to the intended beneficiaries. Consultation is usually done by organizations who feel themselves to be obligated to the community. It is usually done through meetings or surveys which facilitate some dialogue. The community feels involved in the process, but the decision-making power is still retained by the external agency or organization. In placation, usually a small group of representatives from the community are handpicked to participate. It is seen to be safe to engage with this small group. The decision-making power is still retained by the power holders, and it is they who ultimately decide about the legitimacy and appropriateness of the suggestions put forth by the community representatives. All of these 3 stages are considered by Einstein as tokenism, which falls short of the true spirit of participation. In the rung of partnership, power is redistributed to community members, and they are now involved in decision-making committees. There are specific roles and responsibilities identified for them. However, there is still the risk of excluding some stakeholders like the youth or women. In the delegation rung, active involvement of the community is ensured and majority of the decisions are now taken by them. That is, the community members. They take accountability for the process and are involved in important decisions like budget and financial implications, etc. At the final stage, the community takes full control of the process and are now responsible to govern all aspects of its delivery and management. The process is now self-managed by the community, and they are the sole power holders. Einstein's typology of participation thus provides a clear framework to understand the gradual progression from non-participation to full participation. There are a few other such models of participation, and we will discuss them during our future sessions. We need to now understand the context within which community participation is located. The individual remains at the center of all development initiatives that call for any social or behavior change action. The socio-ecological model identifies the agency of the individual to be influenced by and situated within a larger socio-political framework. Within this, various other social institutions like family, peers, local governance structures interplay to create the multiple spheres of influence. Immediately close to the individual is the interpersonal sphere, where the family, friends, and relatives are located. Beyond this is the institutional sphere. Educational institutions like schools, local clubs, associations, health and medical functionaries, local government bodies, etc. are all located here. Next comes the community, which is basically constituted of the relationships and communication between various institutions located within. Thus, any activity of community participation has to be inclusive of and responsive towards all these inner spheres and institutions. It has to include all these identities which are subsumed within the identity of a community. Now, for all practical purposes, it may not be possible for each and every member of the community to take part or be involved in the process equally. In such cases, attempt can be made to identify key groups who can be effectively involved. This is called stakeholder analysis. In doing so, we can also identify who will be affected how by the initiative and to what extent. We have to evaluate whether they are positively or negatively affected by the initiative. Stakeholders can be categorized as primary, secondary, and external or tertiary, depending on their engagement with and influence over the process. A stakeholder analysis map like this will first identify the stakeholders and categorize them. If we have to take a random example, primary stakeholders may mean women and children. Secondary stakeholders will be the family members, friends, and relatives, and also religious leaders who have a stake on the issue. External stakeholders in such case may indicate the local governance bodies or donor agencies involved in the process. Next, we need to list the interest of each stakeholder to be involved in the process. We have to list how the proposed initiative is likely to affect them, positively or negatively. And then we have to rank their importance and influence over the process. This will give us more clarity regarding how we need to engage with each one of them. We have to next draw the participation matrix. This involves planning the level of engagement with each stakeholder for different stages of the program cycle. This means that we have to identify which stakeholder will participate in what capacity at which stage of the program. This will help us in designating specific roles to each stakeholder and also ensure continued and gradual progression in participation for each one of them. We have to plot all the stakeholders on this chart to arrive at the participation matrix. Having drawn the participation matrix, we have to now go beyond our drawing boards and engage in facilitating actual community participation. There is no better way to learn than to learn it through experience. A good community facilitator has to have the temperament as well as the skills while engaging with communities. One of the key qualities of a community facilitator is that he or she is an avid listener. It is always very important to listen to the communities before we frame our understanding about the problem in hand. We have to deal with a great deal of empathy and instill trust within the community members. In many cases, we have to be ready to unlearn our textual knowledge and learn newer perspectives to understand and deal with a problem from the community members. We have to be ready for and open to all such information. Collection of field data is integral to all participatory community action and research. For this, one has to be familiar with various participatory research and data collection tools. In our next lecture, we will discuss about a few of these tools and techniques. Till then, have a nice day and be proactive in engagement with community members. Thank you.